Welcome to Technado.
Welcome to another episode of Technado. I'm Sophie Goodwin, one of your hosts. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of Technado, ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro, and just remind you that you can use that code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership. Unfortunately, I had to miss last week, and I was very, very sad. And I know that sounds sarcastic, but it's not. I actually missed out. But I'm glad to be back this week alongside Don Pizzette. What did I miss last week, Don?
You missed a phenomenal hosting job. I mean, between Daniel and I, we killed it.
We covered at least 33% of the things necessary to do a proper podcast.
And we didn't lose any sponsors that I'm aware of,
true.
Especially since we only have one.
Hard as we tried.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But it was a good week. We did miss you, Sophie. You create order and structure to the podcast. So it would be nice to fall back into that today.
Well, I'll certainly do my best, but I'm glad to hear that it went well. And Daniel, I'm sure you tarnished my good name while I was gone.
Yeah, obviously. I do find it interesting that your default voice is sarcasm.
I've had to start clarifying. Like,
Yeah,
I'll say something in earnest, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, real funny. I'm being serious. But
So I've had this problem, right? You got to really work on that because I dislocated my shoulder once, and my friends were like, whatever. Well, they thought I was lying. I'm sitting there like writhing in pain. They're like, here we go. He's trying to make us believe something. I'm like, no, I need a doctor. They're like, yeah, whatever. Get up. In their defense, I did make one of them believe that my mom had a prosthetic limb and he knew her since like he was in like 8 years old. And that was not true. And what was the other thing? Anyway, yeah, I would try to make my friends believe
You earned it.
false things a lot. So.
okay, well, I'll be sure not to go in that direction with my life. And
Duly
maybe that'll
noted.
be. We're coming towards the end of the year, so maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution is
Yeah.
to not talk like a jerk. So we'll see if I can follow through with that. But in the meantime, we will go ahead and get started with these articles that we've got because we have some good stuff for you today. So this comes to us from neowin.net. In case you were wondering, the title is More Info Has Been Revealed About the New Meet app in Microsoft Teams. Now, I'm a daily Teams user, and I did not know about this. So
MEAT or MEET?
I wish it was. I wish.
Because this could go weird real quick.
No, it's a new tool to help you find local butchers in the area. And
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams is, they're teaming up with local businesses.
Yeah.
So this is, I think it's supposed to make it easier for, if you've got upcoming meetings or meetings that you've missed, it's supposed to kind of consolidate that information from what I understand. But I have Teams meetings every week, and I didn't know about this. So I'm
Plus,
curious.
If you miss them, you're fired.
Right, exactly. You better be there on time. I came back from Wild West Hack and Fest, and there was like 3 meetings that I had no clue about on my calendar. I was like, cool, this is fun. So maybe this would have helped me in that instance. So this is a new thing. What's the point of this Meet app?
All right.
Don is totally he's broken right now. You can't see his
I
face.
can't get the Tommy Boy quote out of my head, right? You can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a butcher's ass. No. What I mean is, all right. So, there's a lot of companies out there that are putting out a lot of really dumb products, and it's AI this and ML that, and it's just like all over the place. It's insane. Every now and then, something comes out that is actually useful and might turn out to be that way. Meet is one of those, in my opinion. So I had a chance to try it.
They're never
Microsoft-
going to lose the stigma of this being MEAT. Right? Man, have you tried Meet? It's awesome.
So when I first heard about it, it was, hey, here's this app that runs inside of Teams that helps you keep track of your meetings. And I thought, wow, that sounds awfully like a calendar.
Yeah, it does.
Which we kind of already have. We have multiple calendars. We have a calendar in Outlook. We have a calendar in Teams. And, so here's a third calendar. This makes sense. Like, might as well have it in SharePoint.
They could just rename calendar vegan, right? And that way, it's like the opposite of Meet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So then they rolled it out where if you're in the new Teams client, you can enable it. It might even be enabled already. For me, it was enabled already. I just had to pin it to my bar to see it, which oddly enough, I did on my other computer, and I've just noticed it doesn't carry over here to my my laptop. So
That's a feature.
That's a feature. But anyhow, what it does is it shows you your meetings, right? So again, just like a calendar, here's your upcoming meetings. Couldn't have found that out. But it also shows your past meetings. And the feature that makes this useful to me, it shows attachments that were posted in that meeting. This is the problem I have. I'm in a lot of meetings, right? So when I say I'm in a lot of meetings, I don't know, 9 or 10 a day, a lot. and I'll have conversations with people. So like maybe I'm chatting with Sophie in Teams, so I've got my chat just for her. But then I might have chats where it's Daniel and Sophie or 5 other people, and I can't remember. I know they sent me this attachment. Which chat was it in? Which meeting was that a part of? Now you can go into the Meet app and you can see all of your meetings. You can just scroll right back, chronologically see them, click on them, go in there and access that T-bone. It's right there.
Golly, every time you call it me, just get that Meet app. It's like this joke writes itself, man. I can't. I think that their marketing team did not think this through.
You've got to. Well, so when I first heard about it, I thought about Google Meet. Right, because Google Meet, that's their conferencing app.
Like so many Meet.
Yeah. I could see that being a marketing challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's out there. It's actually useful, in my opinion.
Okay.
More useful than the calendar. My complaint about the calendar in Teams is how slow it is. The
calendar in Teams is brutally slow.
Is.
Okay, I'm glad it's not just me. I thought maybe my computer was just, I was doing it wrong or something.
Oh, no, it's like they're just throwing the middle fingers at you because it's like, I try to use calendars. You get what you deserved. I mean, you've got the Outlook with the calendar in that. Why aren't you using that, they said. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know why they double birded us when it came to the
hard to say
the Teams calendar because it is painfully slow.
It does remind me of Google a lot though. Where remember how Google had at one point 3 different chat apps, and
they did.
And yeah,
I don't know. I don't use a bunch of chat apps.
And at one point they had 3 different video conferencing apps too. And it was like, good gosh, you're one
For
company.
what?
Why can't you consolidate? All right, maybe it makes sense to have an old one and a new one, but they had like 3 that were all actively supported.
Yeah. You just chose were they vastly different in some strange way?
They would have like one targeted towards consumers, one targeted towards G Suite, and one that was, I don't know, you had to have magical powers to use.
Only leprechauns that lived in Alaska.
Yeah, just strange. And remember how Microsoft had like Skype for a while, and they had,
what was it?
I forgot the other one.
Yeah. Was it Z something?
I don't know, something stupid. And
they ended up getting rid of it, right? Yeah. They squished it all together, and then that eventually became Teams.
Yep.
And
okay. Interesting.
Good times.
I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you start acquiring a bunch of stuff. And then you've got to start like, well, we don't want to go ahead and change the name now because then people that are using it can get confused. So we got to start, making everything start to work together, eventually become one product. And you just got to roadmap that out and make that happen.
Yeah. Google gets a bad rap for, wait, hang on. It's not a bad rap. It's a reality.
Yeah, it's a real rap.
Like just canceling products out of the blue and they're just dead and that's the end of it. Microsoft at least does consolidate things, but they do churn through products like, OneDrive, which used to be Microsoft Groove, which used to be part of the SharePoint Sync tool. And it just changed names a number of times, but here we are today and it's still there. You still use it, just different name.
Yeah.
That's funny because I actually just realized Teams is an anagram for meets. So we're really not that far off. We are really not that far off. So join us next week when Microsoft comes out with a new article that says, Microsoft, we have the meets.
Yeah.
We'll see what developments.
The new product, Microsoft Pork Loin. It's like, this is the marketing crew over at Microsoft.
Oh,
someone's just really into like cooking. It's watching Gordon Ramsay shows like left and right.
Yeah, Bill Gates has been on an Iron Chef kick, and he called up. He was like, "Hey, you guys, let's introduce this new product." I think we've got more Microsoft stuff coming up here in a second.
Yes.
So I don't know. Maybe we'll keep talking about meets. I guess we'll see whether you're playing
meat or meats.
It's meet, MEET, singular.
Okay.
I'm just meets is funnier sounding. So yeah, Microsoft Meet. I don't want to get in trouble. So
and just a word of advisement.
Don't Google meats.
Like I was in Microsoft Meet just this morning on my other computer, and here on my laptop, I'm in the new Teams client, and I cannot find it. So it may not be on a full rollout just yet. Be aware. If you don't find it, it should be rolling out. Like I said, it is on my other computer is not in any insider ring or anything. It's the straight up production Windows 11 with Office 365. So not sure why it's not showing up here.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, in between these other articles, I'll be looking for more anagrams for Microsoft Teams and see if we can't work some more meat jokes.
You got an anagram, online anagram maker?
There's several. Yeah. I use it regularly, to be honest with you.
If you say it and play it backwards, it tells you have to worship Satan.
Yeah. Why will shed the blood of the innocent? Whoa, Microsoft. No, calm down.
Those anagram finders, that's how I figured out your name is an anagram for dollar weenie.
That's right.
So that's...
Where's the W
there you go.
in my name? Oh,
Last
Lowry.
name.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
First and last.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I could probably add in your middle name and it'd be even funnier, but I won't worry about that right now.
You got any good ones for your own?
I haven't found any good ones for me. Sophie Goodwin or Sophia Goodwin doesn't generate a ton of funny stuff.
Bummer.
Nothing has
Just
topped...
like the real one.
Oh, zing.
No way.
You
No
need some
way.
burn cream for that burn? Because it is sick.
You had that in the chamber, man. You've just been waiting to use that one. I'll see if I can find anything funnier than my actual name and personality while we're going through these other things. So moving on, before I start crying, we've got an article from Tom's Hardware, PowerToys.
Oh, man. See, I'm sorry. Don, you did this on purpose, didn't you?
See if she can get the headline out.
PowerToys gets updated with new homepage, environmental variables editor. PowerToys gets more powerful. So, I'll
Remember
be
that
honest.
scene in Naked Gun 33 1/3? Yeah, just leave it there.
I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with PowerToys. This is not something that I have heard of. So maybe you can shed some light on this
All
for
right.
me.
We have talked about PowerToys on the podcast a couple of times over the years. Peter Van Rystum used to make fun of it endlessly because it's horribly named.
It really, I mean, like I said.
But basically what's going on is years ago, if you've never heard of PowerToys, there was a guy whose name I can't remember. Was it Mark Rusinovich? It was somebody like
Mark
that.
Rusinovich?
It might have been
that did all the like
the PK tools and all that stuff. Yeah.
PS exec and all that stuff.
It was either him or someone like him where
Yeah.
he was independent and he kept creating all these tools to be able to use to help do things in Windows that you couldn't normally do, right? And if you were a sysadmin, these were incredibly useful. You know, it unlocked some capabilities that were very, very handy. Your average user didn't need this stuff, but if you were a power user, here were these things that you could use. And they were all individual tools. And eventually he got hired by Microsoft. Microsoft made them official. And so then you can go and download them, much like they did with the PK tool set from Rusinovich. So I don't remember if that was him or not. But either way, this set of tools has been evolving, and a new version just came out where they added two really cool things. And so I thought it was worth mentioning here on the podcast. The first thing is they introduced a new dashboard. There are a lot of tools now. I don't know the exact number, but it's creeping up on like 30 different tools that do all sorts of different stuff. And you used to have to launch them individually, so you had to know exactly what you were looking for. Now it's packaged with a really cool dashboard where you can just see all the tools, and many things are reduced to a simple, like a toggle switch. Yeah, which is
One
neat.
of them, by the way, is called Crop and Lock. And I'm like,
Crop and Lock.
That is so funny.
Huh.
Yep. And at the same time, they introduced another tool as a part of the PowerToys set for editing environment variables. It used to be really easy to edit environment variables in Windows, and as they've shifted to the Metro and Touch UI and all that stuff, it's become increasingly difficult. So they've kind of brought that here into the PowerToys set. So you can click on it, you can see your environment variables and the system variables. You can set them. And my favorite feature is you can define profiles. I hate having environment variables like modified paths that stay there every day for the rest of your life. When I only need them at certain times, they've got it where you can flip between profiles to turn environment variables on and off, which I think is pretty slick. So not something everybody out there needs, but if you're a sysadmin, if you're somebody who needs to get into some of the advanced functionality in Windows, it's a pretty cool tool set. It's officially supported by Microsoft. So it's on the up and up, as they say. And you can install it right from Winget is what I used. I pulled it from the Windows Package Manager and installed it that way. It's live and out there. Check it out.
Nice. I feel like this is rife for abuse, though. Like, for someone to create a PowerToys, like, malicious version, right? Or to use PowerToys, like, anytime you add functionality to your computer, it kind of opens you up. So if I can create a profile, if I'm an attacker and I've made access into your machine, maybe I'll create a profile that hides certain things that I do, and I flip it off and on, or I make you flip it off and on without you really realizing that is occurring.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. But this is computers, right? Like, we like them to do things for us, but as we kind of add that things, there's always a possibility of
two
abuse.
defenses to that.
Sure.
So one, for the majority of the tools, it does not require admin privileges. So most of what it's doing is stuff a regular user can do anyway, whether they have the tool or not.
Right.
And then that's kind of my second point is there's no new functionality here.
No. It just makes it easier to do. Well,
right.
I'm just thinking of, like, is the idea that I can hide that functionality, that it is being done and you don't really know because all I had to do was flip a toggle.
Yeah.
And unless you're checking that on a constant basis.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't.
That's a good point. So like there's a host file editor, right? And it's got a button just says launch the host file editor, takes you right in. That does require admin privileges, so it prompts you there.
And if I if I do a UAC prompt bypass, then off we go.
if we had a malicious version of the tool, we could be showing you one host file while writing a different one.
Yeah, that's another good point. Yeah.
So,
not that I'm sorry I took this down like a security turn. It's just my thing. So
that's what we expect.
Yeah.
I launched that host file editor, and to get an interesting warning, it says, altering host files has direct real-world impact of how this computer resolves domain names.
Nice.
I would argue that's not real-world.
How so?
As opposed
I guess
to
it's what you view as real.
So if I change like DNS, if I make like what you think your DNS server is a different DNS server, and it's redirecting you to like credential harvesting sites.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, doesn't Edge ignore your host file now?
I don't know. I don't use Edge.
I thought it did.
Plus, does your computer use Edge for everything?
Probably.
Probably not.
Microsoft probably wants that, right?
Right. And if so, I don't know if Edge does if it ignores your host file or not. Like, what's the purpose of it at that point?
Yeah, there was an argument a few years ago about that. If web browsers were going to start ignoring the host file,
just take it out
because they were worried about attacks like these.
Yeah,
and really it was only developers that ever really needed to override that. It's not entirely true. Hobbyists and stuff do it too.
Right.
But yeah, there was a whole argument. I don't know where that went. So
that's an interesting
maybe that one hasn't
rabbit
happened.
trail there.
All right, well,
Sophia, your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about me. So
You said
sorry.
it, not us.
We've completely derailed her.
I'm sorry. No, this is new to me. I know y'all said that you've talked about it on the show before, but I think it was probably before my time. So reading through this was a whole new world to me, a whole new tool.
Yeah, and that's how this tool's supposed to be. Here's a bunch of tools that normal people don't need. But if you're an advanced user, somebody who's needing
been around
to
the block once or twice.
Then you can come in here and you can do it. And some of the tools are silly, like the color picker. I don't know that I've ever used that. Some of them, the image resizer. Like, I don't think of that as an administrative tool, but here you can come in and resize images. Woohoo!
This is an interesting one. Registry preview.
I don't know that one. What is that one?
I don't know. It says launch registry preview. I'm looking at
a quick little utility to visualize and edit complex Windows registry files. Oh, so you can open a .reg file and see it rendered like the registry.
Gotcha.
That could be useful.
Okay.
I've never used it, but there you go. All right. So anyhow, neat set of tools. Check it out.
This might be an obvious question because, like I said, this is still new to me. But the versioning convention, how it's 0.75, version 0.75. You said you guys have talked about this over the last couple of years, so I would assume it would be. The version number would be higher. Is there a reason that it starts with 0?
Version numbers are they're
alchemy.
It just is up to the
fiction.
Yeah. Okay.
And for tools like these, some developers feel like it'll never be done. It's never version 1.0. It's never what they had it all envisioned. And you end up with these minor versions. There's a couple of products that are out there like that.
Interesting.
There's ones like OpenSSL.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't the current version of OpenSSL like 1.11? Something really low. Now I got to look it up.
I guess I'm just so used to seeing like these super high, like we're on iOS 17 now. Like I would assume this is a new.
So normally I would say in general, if you are a alpha product, you are live at 5, you have been tried and tested, and you are ready to go and deploy for people to actually use and call it a baked solution, they typically Rev 1 that. Okay. Right? That is a typical thing. But there is no rule. There's Wild West out there. You can do whatever you want. It just helps people to go, oh,
sure.
Well, this is the first iteration of this.
It gives you some context.
Actually giving me a array. So I know with like programming languages, a lot of time before they become like, we fully support this. This is ready for prime time. It will be pre 1.0.
Okay.
And I'm very wrong on OpenSSL. They do have OpenSSL 1.1.1W, which was updated in September 2023, so still being updated. But after that, the current version is 3.1.4, so that one's iterated higher. But but there are plenty of products out there, Sophie, where they stay like below a 1.0.
Yeah,
and it's because maybe they feel like it's just not ready for full release, so there's still stuff they're changing, and it's entirely up to the developer.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that. The more you know.
Yeah.
I learned something today. Now I don't have to do anything for the rest of the day because I learned something.
Yeah,
And we got a cease and desist.
I think largely version numbers are just as long as they go up, they make sense to people, right? And that's why, like with Ubuntu, they're always I don't know, acidic aardvark and stuff like that, where they want you to just associate a name to it instead of a number because the number doesn't mean much.
Yeah, I guess I'm just so used to seeing the version numbers relatively high that I would see something like that, and if I didn't know anything about the tool or the application, I would assume it was super new. But say about assuming,
right?
It's, you know,
yeah. Well, I mean, to the point about the Ubuntu, where acidic aardvark and feisty fawn, which one's the new one? If you don't know, if you don't know
they're alphabetized,
yeah, that's true.
And then they wrap around every 26 releases.
Yeah.
There was the whole thing. Remember when Microsoft skipped Windows 9?
Yeah.
So they went from Windows 8 to Windows 10. And at the time, people were saying it was because Apple was at Mac OS 10. And so like Microsoft didn't want to be behind Apple, right? They want to catch up. The reality was that Windows 9 would turn up in certain search strings that developers use to determine if you were running Windows 95 or Windows NT.
Gotcha.
And so they were like, we're going to break programs unless we skip 9. And that's why they skipped 9.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's a pretty legitimate reason.
Yeah, that's practical.
Yeah.
It's not a vanity reason.
Okay.
Okay, well, there you go. I learned something. Maybe you did too. Or maybe you're looking at the screen right now and you're like, how could you not know that?
Yeah.
Well,
Who
now
cares
I do.
about Windows 95?
See, that just sounded like propaganda from the Apple side of things, where they're just like, yeah, you're just trying to keep up with us. Like,
well, then you have Ubuntu that switched to years, and they're like version 23 point whatever. So
yeah, you guys are way behind.
I guess that if I knew the convention that they were using, that would make sense to me. But yeah. I guess I didn't know, and now I know. So we'll go ahead and move on. I think that's all we've got for Microsoft, at least for right now. Microsoft meets Teams, whatever. So we'll go ahead and move on. We've got a segment up next. It's one of my favorites. This is It's like I look over and there's a proud uncle sitting at the other end of the table.
It just very good.
The face that comes across the screen or across the table.
I will no longer be surprised when you do it right.
Hours of practice
when it's bad.
I think I might cry.
Yeah.
This article comes to us from the Register. Overheating data centers stopped 2.5 million bank transactions. So it was, I believe, DBS and Citibank that were involved in this. And I guess they were running infrastructure in the tropics, and their disaster recovery plan was not up to
right?
Something went wrong.
What was that movie with Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones where they were bank robbers and they were breaking into that bank in Thailand, the two big towers that were connected?
Was that
Entrapment?
That sounds right. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I think a lot of people don't realize how big of a economic hub Thailand is, and how, or Malaysia. Sorry, I got to get my country straight here. So that's in Malaysia. That a lot of the world's financial infrastructure is happening in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Like that's just where people think New York, they think the stock exchange, they think of all the stuff that's going on there, but a ton of the world's economy passes through Southeast Asia. And so it's not unusual to hear about something like this, an outage in Singapore impacting millions of payment transactions and hitting Citibank and DBS and these big names that we don't normally associate with the Asian markets, but they get impacted. But I don't want to turn this into an economy show. So what's important here is what happened. There was a data center there, a big one, and a lot of really critical infrastructure there for the financial markets. And they were doing maintenance. They were doing an upgrade on some of their systems that help to control their heating and cooling. I doubt there's heating at all, really. So it's just cooling in a data center. And the people who maintain the cooling accidentally closed off the vents to the chiller.
Whoops.
And so when you do that...
and then they started a barrel fire.
It can start a fire, absolutely. But in this case...
They just like a good one, keep warm next to it.
It's a backup plan.
Yeah, that's right.
So the data center overheated, right? The server started going into thermal shutdown, and so that takes the data center offline. We talk about sometimes the CIA triad, right? The confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right?
Yeah.
This is the availability part of security. We don't think about an air conditioning failure as a security incident, but it is because it falls under that.
If I attack it, it's a security incident.
Yeah. But sometimes an attack can be an accident.
So can attacks be accidents? Oh, I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? Yeah, I think we did.
I don't think we answered it, but
I think that there is philosophically, I think you had a pretty good, if I'm remembering correctly, a pretty good use case where accidents could be considered attacks.
I think I referred to it with the manslaughter argument.
Yeah.
You've got murder, you've got
Right,
manslaughter.
Through negligence, yeah.
So anyhow, this isn't murder. No one died. Just to be clear.
They didn't cook the admins in the data center.
Well, we don't really know that, do we?
That's true.
Either way, the air conditioning stopped working is what I'm trying to say here, and the data centers went offline. So that's bad. The chillers are supposed to be redundant. You're never supposed to have them all blocked off, but in this case, they were blocked off.
Yeah.
And so that's a design flaw.
It's like the Chernobyl of data center outages, right? Like, hey, let's turn all the safety features off and then see what happens.
And
nothing good.
Yeah.
That's normally how that goes.
I worked for a bank out in Seattle, so we had, I don't know, 110 branches or something like that. And in our main data center, we had 2 chillers, and I remember one of them, the belt started squeaking one day, and that was a 5-alarm fire for it. No, it wasn't a fire. It's my words.
Metaphorically,
it was a critical issue for us. Like once you hear that belt squeaking, that chiller could stop at any time, and now you're down to 1, and you could say, well, all right, they're redundant. But what's to say that other one's not going to fail? And
I think in the military they'll tell you like 2 is 1 and 1 is none, that kind of idea. So the more of something you have, the better off you are.
And if you have an unlimited budget, then why not?
But have more.
Now, to add insult to injury, once the data center started going offline, they implemented their disaster recovery plan. They have redundant data centers. So let's just fail over to another data center. But unfortunately, their disaster recovery plan did not work.
Oh, bummer.
It had problems. And so the reason I wanted to mention this here on the podcast, they've resolved it at this point. So they're back online, and I think they were only offline for a handful of hours. But basically, it highlights how important it is to test your disaster recovery plan, because it might look good on paper. You may think you've thought of everything, but unless you actually implement it, you actually do a failover, you don't really know.
I feel like anybody that's done any kind of workstation support, you can see this mentality, right? When you go to someone's email box and you log in to help them with something, and you look at that trash folder, and it's got 14 gigs of data in it, and you're like, wow, your trash is full. Why don't you delete that? Oh, I can't do that. What if I need something there? I feel like that same mentality comes with like what we're hearing here, where, I mean, we've got the backup, but I'm afraid to flip over and see if it works, because I know everything's working now. And what if it doesn't work? And then we're down.
Yeah.
It's like,
now, and just for you listening out there in TV land, Daniel's story there about the trash bin.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's just making up a story, but I know exactly who he's talking about.
We used to call it inbox 2.
Yep. Yeah, that was a real person. So.
Yeah. It's like a real thing.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Good times.
Like, our Exchange server hates you.
All right. Well, learn from other people's mistakes. That's what I always say. It's a little less painful. Test your disaster recovery. You'll appreciate it.
Right. Just go ahead and set the clock and say, hey, on the Thursday, we are going to flip this thing over and see if it actually does what we think it should do. And if it doesn't, well, at least it was a controlled fire.
It was on your schedule.
Right.
Yeah.
Not on oh no.
Yeah. Having a plan doesn't really help if you're not sure that it's going to work.
Correct.
Or if when the time comes, it fails you. So
yes.
Yeah, good to know. If you run a major bank, don't do this.
Don't we all?
Yeah. There you go. That's one takeaway from this episode. That's what you should take away. I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot.
I could put it in my major bank.
But it's weird that it happens. You could do that.
Yeah.
You could do that. Well, I think we'll go ahead and take our break here. Gone through a little bit of news, but don't worry, we've got more security news coming up next, so stick around for more Technado. Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info. Welcome back for more Technado. Going to be talking about some security news coming up next. But if you stuck with us for this long, thank you so much. And if you're enjoying this episode, we would love it if you subscribe to the channel, wherever you're watching or listening from. And then you never have to worry about missing an episode of Technado in the future. But we'll go ahead and move on to our security articles, because that's our favorite part of the show, Daniel and I think. We love the tech articles, but this is where I think it gets juicy. Our first article comes to us from Rapid7. Rapid7, observed exploitation of Atlassian Confluence CVE 2023-22518. And I don't know if I said that correctly. Sounds like a droid to me.
I liked it.
Thank you. Yeah, probably a little too fast. I'm the Eminem of Gainesville or something. But anyway, so we're talking about a CVE here. So maybe you can, I don't know, you or maybe Daniel can break down what exactly we're talking about here.
Yeah, but before we dig into the tech details, which Daniel has, I do want to highlight one thing. Atlassian as a company, they make tools that are designed for engineers and developers. And all of the major Fortune 500 companies use Atlassian tools, and it's just very common. If you've heard of Jira, Confluence, Trello, like these are all tools owned by Atlassian. So they all get rolled up together. There was a bit of a scandal, marketing incident, whatever, a couple of years ago where Atlassian wanted to move everybody to cloud-based versions of their software. And many companies protested saying, we don't want cloud, we want on-prem servers. And so Atlassian has still supported that, making it where you can run these things on-prem or in the cloud. What I want to highlight here real quick is that if you're a cloud customer of Atlassian, you can ignore this. This doesn't affect you at all. This specifically affects on-prem deployments of Confluence. And there's other CVEs for several of the other Atlassian products that if you haven't patched, your system is vulnerable. And these are critical systems. So if you're neglecting security on your systems, you kind of get what you reap what you sow, right?
That is kind of how it works out there. Just ask old Equifax, right?
Yeah.
And anybody else that did not update their servers. Because that's what you need to do. That's why they put out these lovely little advisories to let you know. I love this one because I'm looking at the summary of these vulnerabilities on confluence.atlassian.com. They have full breakdowns of these things. And it says, kind of like a yellow, hey, look here, really quickly thing. As a part of Atlassian's ongoing monitoring and investigation of this CVE, we observed several active exploits and reports of threat actors using ransomware. We have escalated CVE 2023-22518 from a CVSS 9.1 to a 10. A 10.
A lot of 10s lately.
Yeah, buddy. Like all over the joint here lately, because that means they're actively being exploited. That's why it's not a 9.8 or a 9 point whatever. It's because once it reaches that critical mass of active exploitation, this is no bueno, right? This is the highest critical rating due to the change in the scope of attack. And of course, they have threat detection rules for trying to run this down. But ultimately, what can happen is that an unauthenticated user is able to manipulate the system in a way that allows them to create an admin user. And from there, they can do whatever they want because they're an admin user, and that gives them access to data and databases and all sorts of fun stuff like that. Not to be outdone, there's also CVE 2023-22515, which is a broken access control vulnerability that allows an attacker to create a admin user and gain access to things. And it says CVSS 10, urgent action required, right? Again, for on-prem stuff, upgrade your instance. If you have this, conduct comprehensive threat detection and investigations because they are actively being exploited. So if you are running Confluence, and of course the versions are in the notes, the effective versions being like basically through 8.0 to 8.5.1 for 22515, and I believe there we go. That's the fixed version. So did they not give us a list of the affected versions in this advisory? Oh, here it is, right? Confluence Datacenter and Confluence, it just says that's the product.
I know they put out a list of the versions you need to be at. So it's been remediated by the following versions, and they list off several. Yeah.
So plenty of information. If you are an Atlassian Confluence user, obviously, hopefully you're getting informed by Atlassian at this point. There should be an email in your inbox. You might want to go check that out. Look at these advisories and follow the mitigation stuff they say, which is basically update your server.
You said there you're seeing more 10s on that scale as of late, and that was supposed to be like a rare thing. If it's a 10, oh boy. So do you think, and maybe I'm wrong on both counts, do you think that's because we're seeing more actual like worse vulnerabilities or things that are more of a threat, or do you think they're getting more lax with their ratings?
So no, it's not a lax about the ratings. It's the idea that, so it's not uncommon to see 9.8s, right? 9.8s is like, we have found a critical vulnerability that allows for remote code execution, or, a user can create an admin user, which allows for a remote. You get the idea. But if it's not being exploited, if we we discovered that through our own research, right? That's cool. That's a good thing. I mean, it was bad that it was there, but it's cool that you found it and plugged the hole. You just now have to go and do your thing. What's weird is the reason we're seeing 10 is because we're seeing these things being exploited actively. Like, they didn't discover it in time, or that even though it has been discovered, it's still being actively exploited because people aren't updating or whatever. So we need to get a little more active when it comes to patching these things. So that's the problem. We're seeing more activity, more threat actors being able to utilize these high vulnerabilities, these critical vulnerabilities to their nefarious ends, and which pushes it up. I mean, it literally said that here in this for the 22518 says, as because of the active exploits and reports of threat actors using ransomware, we have escalated this from a 9.1 to a 10.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? So that's what's happening.
So it's the active exploitation that makes the difference there. Okay, interesting. I had remember you saying before that like you usually don't see 10, so I was just curious.
Not often, but we're seeing it a lot here lately.
And another part of this, though, is that it specifically targets the Confluence server.
Right.
So they can remote execute commands against it, and they are basically deploying ransomware. There is a ransom note and so on. So they do that, but it doesn't necessarily give them a foothold beyond that server. Like, I mean, yes, it gets them that first foot in the door. They're in the Confluence server. They compromise, they ransom it. They can then try and attack the rest of your environment while they're in there. But right now it is limited to the Confluence server. So they would have to do like a chain of exploits to get beyond that.
Oh, again, the more you know.
Yep.
What are you chuckling at over there? Is it relevant or is
funny.
it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I didn't know if you were doing a little Googling over there.
Other people's pain is humorous.
Yeah, always.
Okay. So it's a comedy episode today.
Awesome. You don't listen to pop punk from the early 2000s?
Laughing when old people fall.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Get it?
Yeah. Fair enough. That's the one time I'm going to understand a reference you make in this room. So I'm going to hold on to that. We'll go ahead and move on. We do have a couple other articles that we want to get to today. This article comes to us from Security Affairs. Attackers use Google Calendar RAT, which is a fun acronym, to abuse calendar service as C2 infrastructure. So it was multiple threat actors that are leveraging the calendar service for a command and control thing, right? So big deal, I would imagine.
Yeah. Before we get too far on this, did we ever agree on what RAT stood for? Is it Remote Administration Toolkit?
I thought it was Remote Access Trojan.
It means both.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
I remember having this conversation before, and I don't think we decided then either.
It is both. It is,
okay.
Tomato, tomato.
Okay.
What about in this context?
Probably it is like you're going to use it based off of the context. So in this context, it is a remote access Trojan. This is not a tool.
Okay.
Right? This is not something like administrators would be like, oh, this is a handy thing. No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we talk about botnets and zombie machines and things like that all over the world and how they need to be controlled from somewhere. And so somewhere there's a C2 server, a command and control server. And oftentimes that's a server waiting for telnet connections to come in, or it's running on the Onion network, or something like that, waiting for connections. In this case, they've gotten creative. And they found a way to leverage Google Calendar as their C2 server. And you might ask yourself, well, how the heck does that work? And they got pretty creative, I think, because what they did is they basically create a published calendar that anyone in the world can subscribe to, and you can check it. And when you see a calendar event on there, in the description of the calendar, it's got the commands that you need to execute. You can then execute those commands and then push the results back as an update to the calendar's description. Now, from a administrative perspective, how do you protect from this, right? Do you block access to Google Calendar?
That is going to be tough.
Right. And that's what makes this really interesting. It's not like Telnet or SSH connections that most people shouldn't be making. It's not on weird ports or anything like that. They're checking a public calendar. And that's something that people do. So they've found a mechanism they can use that would be extremely difficult. The only way for us to really protect from this, in my opinion, would be if we've got some kind of IPS, an intrusion prevention system in place that's doing deep packet inspection, looking inside the packet to look at the text in the description and key off of that, because otherwise this is just straight up calendar access, really hard to protect.
Yeah, and then you'd have to use like a next-gen firewall because this will all be encrypted by
Yeah, it's
Google,
got a
right?
middleman, the
So,
SSL. Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to see all that stuff. So yeah, this a toughie. This a real toughie, but ingenious, right? You got, like, I always have to say that's in my hat because, I mean, because of the really good defenses that we do have out there, attackers have to get super creative on how and new novel ways to exfiltrate data, use or create some sort of covert channel for their C2 traffic. And this is just absolute genius. You got to be honest with you. And what's interesting, I did look up a proof of concept code for this to kind of, and I think that's where this article is actually pulling it from, was the GitHub repo that I found as well. It's very simple to use, right? What you do is you say, hey, here is, so you got to remember, let's set the stage, right? We are in a post-compromise environment at this point, right? Because that's what C2 traffic is all about. Oh, okay, I've compromised your machine. Now I need a way to easily and undetectably
control it.
Yeah, right. I want to give it commands. I want it to do things, and I want those things to return values to me so that I have all that data, exfiltrate useful information to myself as the attacker. How do I do that without getting detected? That's the difficult part. To Don's point, using Google Calendars makes that really, because you're not looking for that. You're not looking for Google Calendar descriptions to have pieces of information that it shouldn't have inside of it, sensitive information being exfilled. Plus, you're not blocking that stuff. So that's what makes this really, really genius. So what they do is in the description, you say, this is the command I want you to run. So I have a little piece of code, malware, as it were, running on your system once, and it's checking that public calendar for commands. Once it finds one, it runs it. Base64 encodes the output and then updates the description of that thing, and then you just go in and look and see and decrypt, or de-encode, not decrypt.
Yeah.
De-encode that information, and voila, there's the stuff that you need. So very, very straightforward, but very ingenious because it's really hard to detect, and no one would probably be looking for this anyway. We have heard rumblings that some threat actors are kind of passing this around on the dark web at this point, kind of playing with this to see how well it's going to work for them. And it's just a quick and easy way of setting up C2 traffic. You just have that one little piece of malware and it installs, and all it does is look at Google Calendars. So the traffic is really under the radar at that point.
Yeah. And, having read through some of it, it seems like this would be pretty easy to implement with any calendar system. So it's Google that's kind of releasing some of this information. They've seen these threat actors sharing the proof of concept, but this could just as easily work with a Microsoft Office calendar or like a Zoho calendar and whatever.
Yeah.
And it would be the same exact challenge. You can use it the same way. So
yeah, any public API, honestly, that allows you to update or change data that is in a public warehouse where it's being stored. I found a way to do it with VirusTotal, right? Because if you have a VirusTotal API, you can submit things to samples to VirusTotal for checking, and then it'll return that, and you can use the API via the command line to get the results of that. Well, you can update things like the description of that, or hash values, or not hash values, but other different descriptors. If I can update that and it is public, well, I can put commands in there in the descriptions. It's basically the same idea.
That's interesting. I'm looking at this diagram and just following along with how this process works, because a lot of this still is relatively new to me. So I like that they put diagrams in there because that helps me. That helps me a little bit. This might be an obvious question, but something like this, a threat like this or a vulnerability like this, is this something that affects like end users like myself that are using Google Calendar, or does this affect just people that are working on the other side of it?
So I think in general sense,
everybody.
Yes,
everybody.
It doesn't really matter if you use Google Calendar or not.
Okay.
Because this is public.
It's the malware that's using the calendar, not so much you. So you may have never even logged into Google Calendar a single time in your entire life.
Yeah.
But if your computer gets infected with this malware, it could be phoning home using Google Calendar.
Okay, gotcha. Yikes. So even if I use Microsoft Calendar as opposed to Google Calendar. This is
Yep.
still
Yeah, it's possible that you would be able to do the same thing.
interesting.
And don't freak out because, I mean, you're already infected with malware at that point, and it could use any number of C2 servers that are
At
out
that
there.
point, you're done for.
This is just a really nice covert system for passing that traffic back and forth.
Huh. So yeah, it's kind of like you said, you don't have to like it, but you can respect it, that it's, this is creative.
Absolutely.
Huh, okay. So panic or don't panic, but you might be affected even if you're not a Google Calendar user.
Well, what's funny is in this GitHub repo at the very bottom, the line says, in all bold text, it is just a POC in Python. Please do not ask me how to weaponize it.
But I mean, it's trivial.
pretty straightforward
to
at this
weaponize
point.
it. Yeah.
All right, well then we'll go ahead and move on to our last article for today. Although that was an interesting read. This one comes to us from Security Week, and it's part of a segment that we call "Who Got Pwned." And there's our friend, it's Cartman, right? Isn't it? Yeah, I'm not a super well versed South Park person. This comes to us from Security Week. It says mortgage giant Mr. Cooper shuts down systems following cyber attack. So reading through this, it doesn't look like there's a ton of detail on it yet. There's maybe some speculation as to what type of attack it is, but not a lot of details have been released. So what is the angle that we're covering on this?
All right. So there's a couple of things going on here. Basically, all right, a mortgage company getting hit by ransomware, that's not new. They haven't even admitted that it's ransomware yet, but the criminals behind this have started leaking some information, and people are starting to get upset. If you're not familiar with Mr. Cooper, I don't blame you. First off, it's an incredibly dumb name for a mortgage company, but you might know them from their previous name, which is NationStar. And if you remember the subprime lending scandal of 2006 and the housing market crash and all that, NationStar was one of the bigger players in that whole process. So they changed their name so people wouldn't remember. It's like when, what was it, AirTran became ValueJet?
Oh.
Or was it the other way around?
I don't remember.
I can't remember what their name is now, but
Shows you how much I pay attention.
they had
to
a
that
plane
stuff.
crash, so you change your name so people don't remember.
Oh,
like,
that poor
was
airport,
us.
man. That was all them, not us.
So, Mr. Cooper, not with the greatest of track records, but
were you hanging with him?
Huh? Oh, hanging with Mr. Cooper, great.
Yeah.
So, what I've noticed on this one is the public is getting a little more savvy to this. Like, hey, when Equifax got breached, the personal data of hundreds of millions of people got leaked out, and you really got nothing for it, right? You got like 1 year of credit protection from the company that was supposed to protect you in the first place. So people have really started to catch on that you're getting screwed over by all these companies that have breaches. And so with this case, it's a mortgage company. They've had a breach. It's very likely ransomware. And the attackers have access to the personal information of the people that are in there. Now, I was talking with Daniel about it this morning because people are getting upset about this, and I think it's a little bit misguided because when you take out a mortgage, when you buy a home, at least here in the United States, when you buy a home, your information is like leaked out by default. And Daniel, I know you've bought
some of it is. I
mean,
mean,
you bought a house. I've bought houses. Sophie, I don't know if you have yet.
You have to
If
cross
I've
that
bought a
Rubicon.
house?
Yeah.
Yes.
Look at me and tell me you think I've bought a house.
Gen Z has
So
no
I heard
plan
this
of
morning
buying houses.
that it was either boomers or Gen X at this age, at like being in their 20s, the same people, they had 24% of buying power of the United States, and now it's 4%.
Wow.
Between Gen Z and Gen X.
I believe you.
Or boomers.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
I've never bought a house.
When I was Sophie's age, I absolutely had not bought a house. So no big deal there. But but when you do, you can absolutely count on within 2 weeks of your closing date getting advertisements from every water filter company on the planet. You need a water softener and a home warranty.
Yeah, that's right, because it's expired. And
oh yeah, you need a warranty on your home.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, gardening services, tree services. And that's because the banks are not required to keep that private. The title companies are actually who does the leaking on this stuff. So your title status and mortgage, that goes on to the tax appraiser's website.
Yep.
That shouldn't be hard to say. And so it's out there. And so I think people don't realize how much of their information is disclosed already. And when you look at somebody like Mr. Cooper, even the value of your home is public information. So the only thing that's really private there is your payment history. And we don't know if that's been disclosed as a part of this breach yet.
Right.
So,
or any financial information that might be connected with that, right?
right. And they've not been very transparent on it. But it's still the early days of this compromise. So we have to wait and
When
see
you
what
say they
comes
haven't
out.
been very transparent, it looks from this article like the only thing they've said is, we've had a breach.
Yeah.
Hold.
Yeah. Well, and I think the only reason they even said that was
Because they have to.
they're unable to take electronic payment. And
so there's no hiding from this.
So people started freaking out, like, we're going to get mortgage penalties. This is going to go on my credit rating. Like, I've defaulted on my mortgage. So they had to come out and say, look, all our stuff shut down. You guys get a break, no penalties, whatever. And then they came out, and this is where I chuckled. I don't know if it was this. I don't know if I picked the right article for this one, but they came out and they said, don't worry, we've got you covered. You can pay us through these other means. You can mail us a check or Western Union. And I'm reading this. I'm like, well, I can get on a horse and take you a bag of cash. What are you talking about? Western Union?
Come on, Trigger.
Does that still exist? How do I type a mortgage payment in Morse code? So you can still give them money.
Yeah. You got that
Don't worry.
cashier's check there, Don.
Yeah. That's the primary, that's the first thing they're worried about is, don't worry. You can still pay us. Not your information's safe, not you're not at risk, but you could still give us your money. Don't worry, no problem, because that's the first thing on my mind.
Yep, and I am absolutely looking at the wrong article on this one, so I don't know if we have that quote or if you guys saw it or not, but where, like, we can still process payments, but you won't get any penalties if you...
Oh, here it says, customers who have tried or need to make payments will not incur fees, penalties, or negative credit reporting as we work to resolve this issue.
Okay.
Huh.
All right.
Okay.
So at least they're doing that. They're not going to trash your credit because of their issue, but it affects about 4.3 million customers. And
so you know what's going to happen, right? there are those people out there, and there's probably a lot more than we give credit for. They'll be like, oh, cool. So I don't have to make my payment until this is resolved. So I'm going to keep that money in the bank. And then they're going to steal that money and they're going to spend it. And then when this thing gets resolved and they're like, hey, where's our money? They go, here's the thing. I have a problem. Okay. I had money and it burned and I had to get rid of it by, the Home Shopping Network or something.
Ah, yes.
So, banks are pretty old, been around for a long, long time, and they've learned a lot of lessons. But like back in the Wild West days, people learned that, wait a minute, if you burn the bank to the ground, they lose all the mortgage notes.
Yeah.
And so they don't know what anybody owes anymore. And so now you get your home. And so that was like an actual threat for banks. And
there
so
was a movie about this.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. It was like Emilio Estevez and Demi Moore. I think it was called like Justice or something like that. I'll look it up. Keep talking.
Well, banks learned that, hey, we need more than one copy of all of our mortgage notes so we can store it in multiple places. That way, if the nutsos come and burn us down, we still know who owes us money. But for a while, that was something they did not know. And in a way, you fast forward today, we're kind of going back to that. Like, if they get ransomware, do they lose all knowledge of what mortgages they have? That would be catastrophic for them. It'd be great for everybody who bought a house.
That's what we're hoping. Wisdom. That's what it was called. Wisdom. 1986. And it says, unable to find work after a past felony, graduate John Wisdom and his girlfriend embark on a cross-country bank robbing spree in order to aid American farmers. And what they did was they would steal all the mortgages and burn them and go, there you go. Free and clear. So like, people were helping them, so they abscond from justice. They would show up at a hotel to hide, and the guy that runs like, I know who you are. Just go ahead and take a room. Like,
there you go.
It was a really entertaining movie. But,
so for all you listeners out there who sometimes say, you know what, Don's just full of crap.
Yeah.
He's making this stuff up. I got Emilio Estevez and Demi Moore backing me up. So,
buddy. 86? Yeah, 86.
Well, it wouldn't be a
Interesting
Technado if there was a movie reference that I didn't get. So I'm glad we put that in there.
I would think most people don't get that reference. That's
pretty deep cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better about myself then.
I feel like I've probably seen that movie. That may even be where I learned this. But
yeah.
Emilio Estevez is the guy from The Breakfast Club, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's the jock or whatever?
The jock,
okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't there another one like Billie Jean? Wasn't that similar?
I don't know.
Billie Jean of
Michael Jackson fame?
like as in is not my lover. That Billie Jean?
No, not that Billie Jean.
Okay, different.
She's just a kid. Thinks I'm the one.
The Legend of Billie Jean, 1985 film. And let's see here. It is a teenager from Corpus Christi, Texas, riding with her younger brother, Binks, and skin to the local swimming, stopping for a milkshake to deal with a rowdy local teen. Maybe I'm confusing the
It
two.
sounds different. And who would name the kid
Yeah.
Binks? What is that? It's like
I was
Jar
gonna
Jar.
say Binks.
Jar Jar Binks.
Oh boy. Well,
Aye.
so we've been using the name Mr. Cooper a lot in talking about this article, and so now I've got Mr. Sandman stuck in my head, but with Cooper in there. Not the Metallica song, but the original. The Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Mr. Sandman, mortgage my home, handle my escrow, and give me a loan or something. So
I think you need to run with that.
Yeah.
You think so?
You need a
Yeah.
whole thing. I mean, you got a production team back there.
we'll do a full music video.
We
Make
should
it
do
happen.
that. Like the radio morning shows where they come up with the funny songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should contribute that.
Oh,
I would do
man.
Definitely
that.
not me. You guys should do that.
Yeah.
You guys,
I
it's
would
a
do
great
that.
idea.
I would do that for free, for sure. I do that anyway in my drive over to the office in the morning. Well, if you've stuck with us for this long through all of this, we appreciate you, and we love that you are hopefully enjoying the episode. Again, if you are enjoying it, we would love it if you subscribed, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube. And we'd love it if you also left us a comment. Any thoughts, questions, opinions you've got about this week's articles or anything you want us to cover in the future, we would love to hear it. We've also got on the YouTube channel here, ACI Learning's live events and webinars and things like that go on. I know we had one a couple weeks ago with Joe Hudson and Daniel, and then we're also going to have another one here in a couple of weeks that's another all things cyber webinar. So we'll have more details on that as we get closer to the end of the month. A couple other webinars throughout the month, so keep an eye out for those. And of course, you can always find any of the old Technados that you might have missed on that channel as well. I think that's pretty much going to do it. I want to thank our sponsor again, ACI Learning. And you can use that code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership if you so desire. That's what we do in our day jobs, and we love it. Well, I love it. I don't want to speak for these guys, but I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I get to learn a lot, just like I do here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much going to do it, unless I'm forgetting anything.
So
Which
whatever you do, do not look up the YouTube channel Space Ice.
oh, jeez.
So Daniel showed this to me last week, and I definitely watched at least 7 of them this weekend. So I mean, that's like 2 hours of time.
Yeah.
Totally well spent.
Easily, yeah.
Love that reverse psychology. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, don't look that up.
If you
Do not
value
look
your
it up.
time,
You say it's reverse. I'm telling you, that's not the place to go.
it is
You-
entertaining stuff.
If I could wink, I would do it, but I can't. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up then here. Thank you so much.
Why can't you wink? Is it like a Botox thing? Her whole face is numbed.
You got a 24-year-old who get Botox.
It's like I can't just do the one eye, it's the other one always closes with it.
What?
Yeah, like
Okay.
kind
that's-
of.
all
I have
right.
to like really, really struggle.
is
I can't do
interesting.
it smooth, like
You just got to create that pathway in your.
I probably look like I'm
Timber.
having a stroke when I
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
do that. So,
Yeah.
all right. For the third time, we will go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Technado, and we will see you next time.